There is a scene in this film where the two lead protagonists, played by Jason Momoa and Amber Heard, visit some like cave in the Sahara Desert and find a magical object that can open a door. And in order to do so, they need some water. And Jason Momoa's character says, "I should have peed on it." And what I wish Amber Heard should have said is, "Yeah, you should have seen me defecated on Captain Jack Sparrow's bed." So, Aquaman, directed by James Wan, is a 2018 superhero film in the same context of the DC Justice League movies and the Marvel films as well. It stars Jason Momoa as Aquaman, Amber Heard, Willem Dafoe, Nicole Kidman, and James Wan regular Patrick Wilson. Now, I am a huge admirer of James Wan. I don't think all of his films are great, but I do think he has inspired a generation, just like John Carpenter did back in the 80s. With James Wan did Saw, as we all know, and The Conjuring, Insidious, and Fast and Furious 7. And, of course, the deeply underrated Death Sentence. But here, he makes a movie as a director for hire because pretty much this movie is directed by the studios, not by the talented director himself. And it is very clear and obvious. It is, just like Suicide Squad and just like Justice League, a film built up to sell toys. None of the film is alive. None of it is convincing. It is pretty much 90% a cutscene from a Xbox One video game. I shit you not. It's a film that I wanted to see because I was watching so many dramatic movies, but I wanted something kind of lightweight. And essentially, Aquaman is essentially a remake of Thor, but put into the DC universe. Except it's set into the deep rather than in the sky. Jason Momoa's lead character Aquaman is essentially Thor, but with much more tattoos and a tanned skin. There are some cool fight sequences. Jason Momoa as Aquaman is incredibly likeable, and there is a terrific sequence involving a complete immersion moment where we basically swim through the experience of seeing the city of Atlanta, which is pretty much a city set underwater. The plot focuses on it's an origin story. Well, it's an origin story of the lead character of Aquaman, and it tells the story of basically some guy whose mum was basically a fish woman, a sort of mermaid without the tail of the fish, who a sea queen, if you will, who meets a human being who's a lighthouse keeper, and they fall in love and give birth to a baby who is the character of Aquaman. And what essentially happens is that the woman gets taken away by some baddies, or so to speak, and basically when the character of Aquaman, Arthur, that's why Arthur grows up, he has to save his city from a evil half-brother king played by Patrick Wilson, who's always good, but here he plays the villain because he's a James Wan regular, and he just did it because, you know, he's a mate of James Wan and they're good collaborators. But Jason Momoa has to, and his sidekick, Johnny Depp's psychotic ex-wife, is in this, and they have to go over to stop some bad guys. And essentially what we get is nothing but laser shots, and it's essentially a film that is completely unalive with itself because it is entirely a film dominated by the production company of which it is made, and it is a film that is completely soulless in the same retrospect of, I believe, Wonder Woman and Black Panther. I find those movies to be, even though they are somewhat critically acclaimed, it just, for me, proves Martin Scorsese's point of what he is trying to say about Marvel movies being theme parks. And here, he just proves his point. The films are not alive. They are a tour movie as a form of entertainment to basically sell toys to kids, not actually telling a purposeful, sourceful story, even if the film actually does, like Wonder Woman, has a sourceful story. But the way this film is made is too fast-paced. It is not alive because of the VFX are so digitalized and so video game-like poor, and it's all very fast-cutting. and the dialogue is unconvincing as well. It's all planned out. It just feels like it's going into the same construct of the latter films that are a touch more better beforehand. But although this movie is a tad ahead of, let's say, Justice League, but ultimately, again, it's a film that I wish it could have been a lot more interesting if it took much more of a bold attempt to be a little bit more experimental with what the story concept could have been. And it basically gives my intrigue to see what James Cameron could do with this sort of source material, although he's making Avatar 2, or he's finished making Avatar 2, and that movie is apparently much more realistic according to James Cameron. It's what is funny as well. What is really funny is that the film is not only just somewhat ridiculous, but also horrifyingly campy. But I think it's actually not as more immersive and engaging than, you know, those action superhero films that were made back in the 60s, such as 60s Batman starring Adam West. Even though those films are essentially camp, this is no exception, and it's just downright outrageous and pointless and ridiculous at times, because even there's a side character played by Dolph Lundgren who is there, and I'm just literally laughing my head off because I just didn't buy any of the characters. Even though I found the film somewhat... I found Jason Momoa's character enjoyable and likeable as the lead Aquaman, just like Chris Hemsworth's Thor. But this film has a really poor PG-13 sense of humour, and it just has a sense of humour that is so, like, doesn't cut deep, and it just doesn't give me any vibrations into my set. It doesn't fulfill my senses as far as watching this film is concerned, which is what I try to seek out for, and it just fails to do so because it is a film built up to make toys, and that is exactly what Aquaman is, a film to make toys and to sell. It's a selling movie built up to make money rather than actually focusing on telling a plot itself. And it proves also Tarantino's point as well about the whole digital being a form of threat, being TV in public. What he means by that is that you can do so many things with digital, sure, but I think that film is actually a little bit more cinematic and more immersive and more profound and nuanced and authentic in comparison to a digital, because digital is too crystal clear, and Aquaman, with all the VFX that it has, it's pretty much an extended cutscene of a video game put on a commercial from a commercial made by Toys R Us. So therefore, unfortunately, even though it's directed by the very talented James Wan, he's not there to basically make a film that he wants to make. He's making a film based on the studio's orders, and this film is pretty much made from the orders of its own studio, not actually there to tell a genuine story itself. And that's why I give Aquaman, directed by James Wan, a 2.5 out of 5. Guys, if you enjoyed my review, please put a like, please do subscribe. And I'm going to do the same review of this only in French. So, yeah. So, pour les Français, si vous voulez regarder ça en français, je vais mettre une autre vidéo sur ça pour faire la traduction. And there you go. There you have it. That's my review of Aquaman. And voilà. Au revoir. Arrivederci. Ciao.